Mercedes may have just built an engine so powerful the FIA is preparing to rewrite the rules because of it. And it all exploded in Bahrain. What they never mentioned at launch. What they never explained in technical briefings. What rivals quietly analyzed from GPS traces and acoustic data has now been exposed. The compression ratio limit is 16:1. But evidence suggests Mercedes may have engineered a solution that changes under heat. Cold inspection. Legal. Race temperature. Potentially closer to 18:1. That is not a marginal gain. That is 15 to 20 horsepower. That is straight line dominance. That is championship level advantage. And just as this evidence surfaced, their engine failed after only a handful of laps. Smoke. Red flag. Garage doors closed. Now Ferrari and Red Bull have filed technical dossiers. The FIA is reportedly drafting an emergency clarification. Engine manufacturers are in urgent discussions about signing a revised interpretation before race 1. So now the question is brutal. Did Mercedes out-engineer everyone within the rules? Or design an engine that only works inside a loophole that is about to disappear? Because if that wording changes, Mercedes could lose their biggest weapon overnight. And what we are about to break down reveals why this is not just controversy. It could be the moment the entire 2026 championship shifts direction. Subscribe now because this story is moving fast, and the next decision could change everything. Let us break down what was actually exposed in Bahrain. Because this is not just a rumor. It is a chain reaction. First, the allegation itself. Ferrari and Red Bull did not simply complain about straight-line speed. They submitted detailed technical dossiers to the FIA. That means calculations, material analysis, thermal modeling assumptions. They believe Mercedes designed pistons using a three-dimensional printed alloy that expands in a predictable way under race temperatures. Cold measurement in scrutineering, 16:1 compression, hot combustion during a race, potentially much higher. And here is why that matters more than most fans realize. Increasing compression ratio increases thermal efficiency. Thermal efficiency increases power output without increasing fuel flow. Under modern regulations, where fuel flow and hybrid deployment are tightly controlled, improving combustion efficiency is the holy grail. It means more horsepower for the same energy input, more acceleration, better top speed, and crucially, better energy harvesting synergy with the hybrid system. That explains why GPS traces showed such strong acceleration on day 1. But here is what Mercedes never openly discussed. Operating at higher effective compression raises internal cylinder pressure significantly. That increases mechanical stress on pistons, on crankshafts, on the high-pressure fuel system, on the MGUK under heavy harvesting loads. And then on day 2, Antonelli's engine failed after only 3 laps. Smoke, shut down, session lost. Officially, it was linked to either the high-pressure fuel system or the MGUK. But if you operate an engine closer to its pressure limits, reliability tolerance shrinks. That is simple physics. And that is the second layer of exposure. The first layer is legality. The second is fragility. Now add the political dimension. The FIA is reportedly drafting an emergency clarification. If the rule changes from compliance at ambient temperature to compliance at all times and conditions, Mercedes must adapt immediately. An adaptation at this stage means detuning, reducing effective compression, altering software, sacrificing power. There are even rumors of a so-called Plan B engine specification without the thermally reactive piston design. But that version is slower. So Mercedes faces an impossible choice: defend the gray area or voluntarily give up performance. Meanwhile, another accusation surfaced. Acoustic analysis suggesting an unusual ERS deployment pattern during gear shifts. If true, that adds a second technical investigation: combustion strategy and hybrid deployment. 2 gray zones, 1 team, and the timing could not be worse. Because while Mercedes debates legality and rebuilds engines, Ferrari and McLaren are running long simulations, understanding tire degradation, refining balance. George Russell has already admitted they are behind on mileage, behind on understanding, and in a regulation reset year, early understanding compounds. Now consider the championship implications. If Mercedes keeps the engine as is and the FIA allows it, they may hold a measurable power advantage, enough to offset a slightly unstable rear end, which Antonelli reportedly experienced in high-speed corners. If they lose the power, that instability becomes exposed, because raw horsepower can mask aerodynamic imperfections. Remove it and weaknesses surface. This is why Bahrain feels like more than testing. It feels like a crossroads. Mercedes may have engineered something brilliant. A legal interpretation of wording, a metallurgical innovation. But innovation inside gray areas invites scrutiny, and scrutiny brings pressure. If the regulation is clarified before race 1, the entire competitive balance shifts instantly. If it is not, the protests continue. Either way, Mercedes begins the season under a cloud, and that is the real exposure. Not just the pistons, not just the compression ratio, but the vulnerability of building an advantage that depends on interpretation. Because in Formula One, interpretation is temporary. Regulations evolve, directives arrive, and when they do, only the most adaptable survive. Right now, Mercedes must prove two things: that their engine is legal, and that it can last. Until both are confirmed, the storm over Bahrain is not going away. Now let us go even deeper, because what makes this situation explosive is not just the technology, is the timing. We are less than 2 weeks away from race 1. Engines are homologated, development windows are closed, and yet engine manufacturers are reportedly in urgent discussions about signing a revised interpretation of the rule before the season even begins. That tells you how serious this is. When rivals push for clarification this aggressively, it means they believe the performance gap is real and dangerous. If Mercedes truly unlocked 15 to 20 horsepower through thermal compression behavior, that is not something competitors can ignore for an entire season. That is race-deciding power. That is qualifying dominance. That is the ability to run lower rear wing angles while maintaining straight-line superiority. And if you combine that with efficient hybrid deployment, the advantage multiplies. But here is the uncomfortable truth. If your performance edge depends on operating at the edge of a wording loophole, it is fragile. Because wording can change faster than hardware. If the FIA modifies the language to require compression compliance under all operating conditions, Mercedes cannot simply redesign the combustion chamber. There is no time. They would have to detune, reduce pressure, alter ignition timing, sacrifice efficiency. And that sacrifice would not just cost peak speed. It would affect energy harvesting balance, fuel consumption strategy, thermal targets. Everything is interconnected, and that is where the exposure becomes structural. Because if the engine was architected around higher effective compression under heat, lowering it might create instability in performance curves. Power delivery could become less linear. Hybrid integration could feel different to the driver. Mapping adjustments could compromise reliability even further. Now, think about the psychological side. George Russell already admitted they are behind on mileage, behind on understanding, behind on correlation. And while they are navigating regulatory uncertainty, Ferrari and McLaren are refining race simulations, building confidence. Momentum builds quietly, and once momentum shifts, it is brutal to recover. There's also the Antonelli factor, a rookie stepping into one of the most scrutinized technical environments in the paddock. 3 laps, engine failure, political storm. That is not how you build stability. If Mercedes must change engine specification before race 1, Antonelli's preparation becomes even more complicated. New mapping, different power characteristics, reduced testing data, and confidence is everything for a rookie. Then there is the rumored Plan B engine, a more conventional specification, safer, slower. If Toto Wolff chooses that route, it signals retreat, strategic caution over technical aggression. But if he defends the current design and the FIA rules against them, the consequences are worse. Public embarrassment, potential disqualification risk, legal tension, and lost performance. So this is not just about whether Mercedes hit something. It is about whether they built their advantage on a foundation that can withstand scrutiny. Right now, the entire paddock is watching one thing: the FIA's next sentence. Because one clarification could remove 15 horsepower overnight. One directive could redefine the grid. And if that happens, the narrative flips instantly. From Mercedes, the innovators, to Mercedes, the overreached. Bahrain did not just expose a technical detail. It exposed how thin the line is between genius and vulnerability. And the season has not even started. The next move will decide whether this engine becomes the cornerstone of a championship, or the cautionary tale of pushing interpretation too far.